Welcome into Coffee Conversations. My name's Josh.
I'm Anna.
And we're glad to be back with you. We've taken a little bit of a break, hiatus by accident.
Yeah, I guess we have. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of traveling.
That's happened.
Microphones being broken. Stuff like that. Anyway.
School starting, yes.
Those
are big things.
That's really what happened.
Yeah.
A lot of things going on. But we're back. We're better than ever.
Better than ever.
Better than ever. You be the judge. Let's talk. So we're talking about what we talked about this past Sunday, which was
doubts.
Yes, exactly. In unison for the win.
That was good.
I was talking with somebody last night, and I said, you know, when we talk about doubt, it's kind of like in that movie Encanto, like doubt in church. It's kind of like that movie Encanto, where it's like we don't talk about Bruno.
Yes.
It's like in church, we don't talk about doubt.
We don't.
We don't do that. We don't do that. Although one of my very favorite signs ever, like, you know, the ones when you're going down the road and they've got the signs on the side of the road.
Yes.
It's like, come to this business, whatever. It was a therapist's office. And it is like when Encanto is at its peak, right? Everybody's watching it, singing all the songs because they're so catchy.
They are.
And at this therapist's office sign says, "We talk about Bruno."
I
was like, genius.
That's good.
Genius. All-time favorite right
I
there.
love that.
Let's talk about doubt. I mean, we don't spend a lot of time diving into that in church life, but I think we have historically been afraid that we're going to send people down a rabbit hole to hell or where else, you know.
Yeah.
But we've got to talk about it.
Right. Exactly.
In your experience, how often would you say like that you come across people who have doubts about their faith?
I think like every day.
Every day, yeah.
I think about students in general are trying to figure out what they believe and why they should believe it. I think especially during those middle school and high school years, a lot of that is kind of figuring out like what my parents have said, am I still doing what they say, or, you know, and so I think there are a lot of like not doubts, but questions, I think a lot of times. So I think it happens and then I think people my age too, like our age, like I think I have friends that doubt, and especially like, you know, when things don't go the way that you had wanted them to go, I think there's some doubt in the midst of that. Like, God didn't answer this prayer that I wanted, or I've prayed for this for a long time. This hasn't happened. Am I doubting now what God has done, or who He is, or is He good? And
right.
I think it's all the time.
I was talking with somebody the other day, and they said they work with an Indian company.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like they're the outsourcing of the job. Like,
got it. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and so they're working with this company that's based in India, but they're here in America doing all this stuff. And when they first started working there, however many years ago, they were emailing back and forth, and somebody responded with something that says, "I have a doubt." Like, that's how I have a doubt, and then asked the question. And it took her a few email exchanges to realize that what they were saying, like in American English, was, "I have a question about this."
Oh,
but
okay.
In their, wherever they were, at least in their corporate culture, maybe even in the broader Indian culture, when they were saying, "I have a doubt," is that I have a question. And what I found is, in faith life, in church life, when people aren't allowed to express their questions, they become significant doubts that push people away from faith.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think we as church people have got to grow a thicker skin and be a little bit braver, understanding that many of the people we come into contact with don't just take everything we take at face value, and they don't have all the same experiences as us, all the same baggage as us that we bring to the table, and so sometimes it's hard to navigate that. What do you do when you have somebody in your life, whether it be on a professional, like I'm a pastor, you're a congregant, or just a personal, like just friends or family, when they have significant doubt, how do you walk through that with them?
I think first tell them, like, I've been there. I've had doubts too. Like, to acknowledge that. 'Cause I think sometimes people think, like, as pastors, we shouldn't have doubts. Yeah. It's like, no, like, I have too. Like, I've been there, and I've doubted before, and the ways that I feel like I got through that was to continue to pray, continue to read scripture, continue to look for answers from the Lord. And sometimes like things didn't go the way I wanted them to, or maybe I had more questions, but found people that I could ask those questions of and know that it was okay to ask those questions. I think provide a space for them to ask those questions and meet up with people, be like, hey, like, let's talk more. Like, it's not, you know, I think when you start thinking about doubts, you start getting more questions because it might bring up some other stuff. And so to provide a way to meet with them and chat with them more.
You know, you said something there that I think is really important, is creating a space where questions are allowed and doubts are allowed. You know, I'm interested how you think we can be proactive in creating that space. So a lot of times we want to create that space when people have the doubts and when they express the doubts, but it's almost feels too late at that point when they're like, oh, I have doubts. And because a lot of times what I find is people start backing up at that moment.
Yeah.
And you have to go find them and say, hey, what's going on? You're like, I'm really struggling here. Or how can we be proactive in creating a space where questions are okay and doubt is okay? Like, how can we be proactive in that, do you think?
I don't know why. I just thinking like how I react when people ask questions. I mean, and that's of course after they're asking the question, but I think if I react in a way that's not like, what? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Then it creates a way for them to know they can still ask those questions, and maybe that's a way that then they're like telling their friends, like, hey, like, you know, I found this place that I might have questions, or I don't know. I mean, I think being consistent in people's lives creates that space. Like, so I think sometimes like you have to build a relationship with people before maybe they'll be willing to ask some of those questions. So to be consistent and create a space for that in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it starts, you got to show up.
Yeah.
You got to be there. You got to be present. And you have to keep from being judgmental.
Yeah.
Right? In little things.
Right.
Right? There's always a line that we got to draw on some stuff. But, you know, an easy example is you see somebody who doesn't understand something in another arena of life.
Yeah.
And you have a choice, right? Everybody's choice. You can make fun of them.
Right.
Or you can say, I guess they just... You can take opportunities to say, well, it looks like they haven't really ever filed their taxes, and so if they did, they would know this about taxes, right? As opposed to, what an idiot.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
What a moron.
Yeah.
You know, because those things build up, and people remember that stuff. Even it's like they remember it, even if they don't remember it.
Right.
They remember the attitude and the approach you took in those things.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I think keeping ourselves from gossiping or talking poorly about another person is so important, because it affects every other area of our life too.
Absolutely.
And our witness. You know, so we talked on Sunday, and I know you took notes, like big time notes. I saw it on there.
I did. I was sitting towards the front because that's where the students like to sit.
Big shout out, COTD students.
Yeah, I will say one of the funny parts was you said something about Y2K, and the whole row of people next to me were like, "What was that?"
Yeah, what is that?
I was like, I feel old.
It was only the most traumatic experience.
It was
yeah.
like there was a lot of uncertainty then. Yeah,
there was so much. Everybody thought we were gonna die.
Yeah, and you can't like I don't know. It doesn't make sense to them now. Like they don't.
No idea. And then we're talking about a Mayan calendar not too long after that.
Yes,
like,
whatever.
The universe was out to get us.
It was. It really was. Yeah, I had never thought about certainty in the way that you talked about it. Can you like talk more about like where that came in and about doubt versus certainty and
so I think that so often we've been conditioned. I think it's probably a post-Enlightenment, modern worldview approach, that we have to be able to feel, touch, smell, measure something in order for it to be true.
Yeah.
Right? Because it has to be provable if it's going to be true.
Right.
And if it's not provable with hard data and facts, then it's not true.
True.
Which I understand to a point.
Yeah.
Right. I get that. But the trouble is when we try to apply that to faith, we run into problems because by its very nature, faith and religion and things about the supernatural and things about the spiritual can't be felt, measured, touched, measured. Like we can't prove those things. So for a lot of people, they say they've grown up with this idea, with this mindset that I have to be able to prove this, ergo be certain about it.
Right.
And because I can't be certain, I can't prove it, I can't measure it, then I can't believe it to be true. And I also understand that. Yeah. However, by its very nature, the religious stuff is not measurable in large part. So what do? We just say, oh yeah, it's all poppycock? Like, no. Like, it's still there. Like, you can't measure love for another person, but it's there. Right. Right? We know it to be true. Now you could say, well, there's all these different chemicals in your brain going off and endorphins. Well, okay, whatever.
Yes, yeah, but
you still can't measure it out.
Right.
So when we talk about faith, we go to passages like Hebrews 11. Right? And we talk about how faith is something is the evidence of things that we've hoped for, assurance of things we have not yet seen. That tells me there's no certainty there. Yeah. Like that there is a level of doubt within, that there's at least room for the possibility that this thing that we believe in isn't going to happen and isn't real. And that's what faith is. Right. So faith, within its very nature, has a level of doubt. So why would we automatically say, I'm done, just because we have doubts? No, in fact, your faith only grows because you have doubts about what you believed before. Yeah. When you start embracing that idea and leaning into that, you go, okay, I'm choosing to believe this thing in front of me based on the evidence I have. So go back to love. I choose to believe that I love my wife, even though I can't measure this stuff. Yeah. I choose to believe that I love my wife because she gives me butterflies. I don't know. But no, I choose to believe that I love my wife and that she loves me. Right, yeah. That's you. Fingers crossed. Yeah. I choose to believe that because of how she makes me feel and how I am driven to want to do things for her, to protect her, to serve her, right? Like that, I choose to believe based on that evidence. And so when it comes to faith, I look at the evidence for Jesus, the evidence for God, and I make the best, most calculated decision I can make based on the evidence in front of me. Right. And that's this story, this really good story about Jesus and God interjecting himself into the world and coming to earth in the flesh. That's a better story, and it matches up with the evidence I see. Right. It's not blind. I'm not just going out there because my grandma told me I had to believe. I'm making this based on evidence. Now, there are some things that I believe today about Jesus, that I believe about God, that I did not believe 30 years ago, 20 years ago. I had to doubt those things that I believed before in order to get where I am today, even in my faith about Jesus. Right. So, what I think is, faith necessarily has an element of doubt. Certainty ultimately will limit. If we try to have certainty, we will limit our ability to expand and grow our faith. We got to be careful there. There's very few things we can be certain about. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I worked myself into a lather. I know, it's good. Getting all sweaty. Like that. Well, anyway, thank you for conversating with me. Anytime. we're glad you joined us for Coffee Conversations. We'll see you next week. Bye.